Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Tefillin, and we will be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Lamed Beis Amid Beis. We begin on the bottom of Lamed Beis Amid Aleph. We're in the middle of Siman Chav Hey Sif Aleph, actually second line from the bottom near the end of the line. Siman Chav Hey in the middle of Sif Aleph. So, you know what? I'll just read from the beginning of Sif Aleph for the sake of continuity. The Mechaber said over here in Sif Aleph, Tallis mitzuyatz, after one puts on a tallis that has tzitzis properly affixed to it, Yoniach tefillin, then he should go and put on tefillin, shemalin b'kodesh. Now, the reason we put on tzitzis first and then tefillin is because malin b'kodesh, we always want to go up in kedusha. The truth is, this is something that might take you by pause. You might say, why should I put on tzitzits before tefillin? Really, I should put on tefillin before tzitzits. After all, tefillin is a chiyuv. Everybody has to go get tefillin and put on tefillin. It's a chiyuv on the gavra. It's something that it's a mitzvah chiyuvis that each person must be makayim. Masha Enkin in tzitzits, we already learned, is not a chiyuv gavra in that way. You're not mechuyev to go get a beged of dalet kanfos so that you should be mechayev yourself in tzitzits. If you have a beged of dalet kanfos, you're mechuyev to put it on, and you're mechuyev to put tzitzits on it. If you're going to wear a beged of dalet kanfos, you're mechuyev to put tzitzits on it. But you're not mechuyev to go get a beged of dalet kanfos so that you should be chayev in the mitzvah of tzitzits. So you would think maybe the mitzvah of tefillin should come first. The Mechaber says no. There's an inyan of malin b'kodesh. We always want to have an upward trajectory when it comes to kiyam mitzvahs, and therefore first we put on the tzitzits, only then do we go ahead and do the tefillin. And we take a look at the biur halacha over here. Take a look at the biur halacha here on Lamed Beis Amud Aleph Dibur HaMaschil shemalin b'kodesh. The Chavetz Chaim says al ha'adam koi. When we say malin b'kodesh, we're referring to the person that is being mekayim the mitzvahs. We want him to go up in kedusha. Shetzarch lelech midarga ledarga. Person has to go from one madrega to the next madrega, or lehisalois b'kedusha, and to see to it that he's always going on an upward trajectory in kedusha. Kimitchiluhu rak mechasa es atzmai b'kiso isha mitzvah. At first, he only covers himself up with a covering of mitzvah, right? He's taking the tzitzits, which is a beged that he wears on his guf, and he drapes himself in a covering of mitzvah. Val yedei tefillin, but through the putting on of the tefillin, hu mikasher es atzmai bekesher hayichud v'hakedusha. When he ties the tefillin onto himself, he's binding himself with a kesher hayichud v'hakedusha. Precisely what kesher hayichud v'hakedusha means. This is a lashon brought down from Eliyah Rabbah and from the Gra. This is something that I would say is a bit beyond my pay grade. But Kesher HaYichud, we know that the Parshas of Kriya Shema, we say, before we put on the Parshas of Tefillin, before we put on Tefillin, we say that Sheyesh Behem Yichudai V'Achdusai Yisparach Shemai. And the Parshas that are in the Tefillin all speak about the Achdus of the Rebbeinu Shalom, right? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem is one. All of the power resides in the one Rebbeinu Shalom. So the putting on the tefillin is a kesher hayichud v'hakedusha, and that's a step up from the tzitzits. Now we go weiter in the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber, now that we know that we're supposed to put on the tallis with the tzitzits and then the tefillin, now this following halacha comes into play. V'hamanichin kis ha-tefillin v'ha-tallis l'soich kis achas. If somebody puts the tefillin bartel, the bag that has the tefillin in it, together with the tallis bartel, if you have, imagine you have your tefillin in one bag and you have the tallis in another bag, and now you're putting them both into one outside third bag. Or, I dare say the way most people do it nowadays, you have one big tallis bag and you have the tallis in there, and you're also putting the tefillin bag in there. So the Mechaber says in these cases, if the tefillin and the tallis are going to be in one bag, you have to take care shelo yanichu kes hatfilin lamayla, that the tefillin bag should not be on top. Why? Kedei shelo yifka bahem tchila, so that you should not encounter the tefillin first. What's the problem with encountering the tefillin first? Well, we just learned that you're supposed to put on the tallis before you put on the tefillin, so that you should be ma'alin b'kodesh. Now, if you're going to encounter the tefillin before you encounter the tallis, in order to put on the tallis first, you're going to have to pass by the tefillin and then go take the tallis. Says the Mechaber, that's a problem. We don't want this. Kedei shelo yifka b'hem tchila. We don't want you to encounter the tefillin first, v'yitztarech lahanicham kaidam hatalis, and then you're going to have to put the tefillin on before you put on the tallis. Why? Kedei shelo yavar al hamitzvah, so that you shouldn't be over on the concept of ein mavirin al hamitzvahs. We do not want to pass by a mitzvah without being mekayim the mitzvah. So again, you're in shul. You're ready to go put on your tallis and tefillin. You open up the bag. We know that you're supposed to put on the tallis first. But when you open up the bag, the first thing that you're presented with is the tefillin. If you're now going to go pass by the tefillin to go get the tallis, that's ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. Now you passed by the tefillin without putting them on. That's a problem of ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. And look at the way the Mechaber writes it. The Mechaber says very clearly, if you do put the tefillin in the bag, so that you will encounter the tefillin first, v'yitztarech la'anicham kaidam hatalis, you're going to have to put on the tefillin before you put on the tallis to avoid, kedei shelo yavar ala mitzvah, to avoid the problem of ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Let's turn back to Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Gimel. You should make sure not to put the tefillin on top. Why? Says the Mechaber, shelo yifka. Now, what do the words shelo yifka mean? Pageya. You might learn it that you shouldn't touch the tefillin first. I translated it as you should not encounter the tefillin first. Big difference. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. Pirush. When the Mechaber says shelo yifka, you shouldn't encounter the tefillin first. Pirush, the explanation is, afilu lo yechayiz behem biyadai. Even if you do not take hold of the tefillin first, you still have a problem of ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. Afilu lo yechayiz behem biyadai. Even if you do not grasp the tefillin first. Rak lefi hayshatas yadai. But it's just that if you would stretch out your hand, hey munachin lefanav tchila, naturally the tefillin would be closer to you. So if the tallis and the tefillin are positioned in the bag, so that when you open up the bag, the first thing that's there is the tefillin, even if you did not actually go in and touch the tefillin, you still cannot pass by the tefillin and go get the tallis, because that would be ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. Ein mavirin alein. You cannot pass by the tefillin. V'tzarech lahakdiman. And then you would have to put on the tefillin first, so that you shouldn't be maver ala mitzvahs. Now, the Mechaber Chaim does point out, v'chol zeh dafke im roitza la'aniach ata tefillin. Of course, this whole halacha is only negeya if you're ready to put on both your tallis and your tefillin now. Avalim adayin ein roitza la'anicham rak la'achazman. But if you're not ready to put them both on, you're only going to put them on later, lo shayach bazeh ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. Then you have no inyan of ein mavirin ala mitzvahs. What does the Chavetz Chaim mean? I think he means like this. Let's say you come to shul and you're going to attend a daf yomi shir first, and for some reason you want to put on your tallis before the daf yomi shir. Maybe you don't have a jacket and you feel a little funny. Nobody else is sitting there in their shirt sleeves, so you want to put on your tallis before the daf yomi shir, but you're not ready to put on your tefillin. You don't want to put on your tefillin now. In that case, even though when you open up the bag, the tefillin are there first, it's not shayich ein mavirin al ha-mitzvahs, because this is not a mitzvah that I'm ready to do now. I'm not ready to put on my tefillin now. So then you could go get the tallis and you could put on the tallis first. Now, some of you might say, oh, I'll use that shtick all the time. Yeah, I opened up my bag and the tefillin are there first, but I'm not ready to put on my tefillin first. You know why? Because everybody knows you put on the tallis first. So I'm only ready to put on the tefillin after the tallis. No. in that case, you're ready to put on your tallis and tefillin. You're ready to put them both on now. Question is, which one should you put on first? You're supposed to put on the tallis first. But if the tefillin are closer, you got to put on the tefillin first, because ein mavir ala mitzvahs. What the Chavetz Chaim means in this case is, you're not ready to put on your tefillin. Me'ezet tam sheyiyeh, I'm not putting on tefillin now. So fine, if I'm not putting on tefillin now, I could just go take the tallis and put on the tallis. But, very critical takeaway from Ois Cotton Gimel over here, and this is a mistake many people make. Don't think that the ein mavir ala mitzvahs problem only is nogeya if you actually touched the tefillin first. No. Even if you opened up the bag and you realized that yesterday when you put your tallis and tefillin away, you didn't put them in properly, and now right when you open up the bag, the tefillin are right there, that's already a problem of ein mavir ala mitzvahs. You have to put on the tefillin first. Because otherwise you're going to pass by the tefillin and go get the tallis. And the fact that you didn't touch the tefillin is not negeya. Okay, now we turn the page and let's go to Ois Cotton Dalet. The Mechaber said, if you do run in to the ein mavir ala mitzvahs issue, v'yitztarech lahanicham, then you're going to have to put on the tefillin first. Says the Chavetz Chaim, nearly pashut, it seems clear and obvious to me, D'im mispalel bebeisai. Let's say somebody is davening for whatever reason, b'yechidus at home, and he doesn't have his tallis and tefillin together in one bag. For whatever reason, he has his tallis in one place and his tefillin in another place. So, the mispal bebeisa, he's davening at home. V'roitz alon yach tallis and tefillin, and now it's time for him to put on his tallis and tefillin and daven. Ubesoy cheder shalafonov munachat tefillin. So he wants to daven in his dining room. Okay, he's davening b'yechidus. He wants to go daven in the dining room. He goes downstairs to the dining room, and his tefillin are right there on the dining room table. His tefillin, without his tallis. Ubesoy cheder acher, and on a shelf in the living room, munachat tallis, his tallis is in the living room. Tzarech lan yach tefillin bereisha. He has to put on his tefillin first. Kedei shelo yavar la mitzvahs. So in other words, the guy came downstairs, okay, I'm going to daven. He's going to put on his tallis and tefillin. He wants to daven in the dining room. He comes into the dining room. He sees his tefillin on the dining room table. He says, I got to go get my tallis. He knows his tallis is in the living room. No, you can't do that, because you're ready to put on tallis and tefillin now. And your tefillin are right there on the dining room table. So you got to take the tefillin and you got to put them on. Otherwise, you are maver ala mitzvahs. Then go to the living room, get the tallis, and put on the tallis. Tzarech laniach tefillin bereisha, kedei shelo yaver ala mitzvahs. Acharei dat tefillin mezumanim lefanav tchila, because the tefillin are mezumin, they're ready right there in front of you first. V'av shelo natal adayin tefillin biyadai. Again, even though he didn't touch the tefillin, not negeya, they're right there in front of you. You got to go put them on. Uraya may had the Yuma Lamed Gimel Amid Beis, but Gemara, he has a raya from the Gemara in Yuma Lamed Gimel Amid Beis Ayin Sham, the Chiyaya Lehechel Ayin Sham. Ois Cotton Hay, the Mechaber said, if you have an issue of Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs, you have to Yitztarech Lanicham, you have to put on the tefillin Kaidam Tallis, before the tallis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Hay, Ve'im Avar V'hinicham Miyadai. Now let's say you goofed. Somebody opened up the tefillin, the tallis bag. He looked inside. Oh, what am I tefillin doing right over there? Yeah, but I got to put on the tallis first. So he went, and he was maver ala mitzvahs, unfortunately, and he picked up his tallis. And then he says, oh, whoops, I goofed. I remember learning in the Dirshu shir that in this scenario, you got to put on the tefillin first. What do you do now? V'im ava, if unfortunately he transgressed this concept of ein mavir and ala mitzvahs, v'hinicha miyadai, and after picking up the tefillin, he put them down. V'nat ala tallis, and he picked up the tallis. Shuv asa la'azvay hulit ala tefillin. Now you can't put down the tallis and put on the tefillin. It's true. What you should have done was you should have put on the tefillin first. But you goofed. You didn't put the tefillin on first. Now already you're holding the tallis. To put the tallis down and go take the tefillin, now first of all, you're going to be maver ala mitzvahs again. You're going to be maver on the mitzvah of the tallis. And you're also going to goof up on the Malin B'Kodesh Vein Meriden. So in that case, certainly, you should put on the tallis first. Now let's go to the Ramah, top line here on Lamed Beis, Lamed Beis. Now this Ramah goes back on the opening of Sif Aleph. In the opening of Sif Aleph, the Mechaber told us, Achar shalavash talis mitzuyatz, after you put on a proper talis with tzitzits, yoniach tefillin, that's when you put on tefillin. It kind of sounds like the two of them have to go together. You want to put on tefillin, first you got to put on a talis. Says the Ramah, no, that would be a misunderstanding. Says the Ramah, Haga, miu im tefillin muzumanim biyadai. If you have tefillin, ve'ein loy tzitzits, and you don't have tzitzits, ain't tzarich lahamtin ala tzitzits. You don't have to wait for tzitzits in order to put on tefillin. Elam and yech tefillin. Rather, you have tefillin, put on tefillin. Ukeshemeviim talis, and then when somebody brings a talis, matvai, then you'll put on a talis. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in vav, ve'ein loy tzitzits. Let's say somebody has tefillin, but he doesn't have tzitzits. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this doesn't mean only that he does not have a talis gadol. Afilu hu ha'ilech b'li arba kanfos. Even if he doesn't have a talis cotton. So a person is not wearing a talis cotton, and he doesn't have a talis gadol, but he has tefillin. Says the Ramah, you have tefillin, put on tefillin. These two mitzvahs, talis and tefillin, are not ma'akiv each other. It's not pshat that you must be wearing tzitzits in order to wear tefillin. You could wear tefillin without tzitzits. You have tefillin, put on tefillin. Certainly, according to our very significant and kaddish minig, where everybody is nizar to wear a talis cotton, so certainly then you have no issue. You're wearing a talis cotton, so you're wearing tzitzits. And ice cotton zayin, the Ramah said, "Ein sarich lahamtin ala tzitzits." You don't have to wait to have tzitzits in order to put on tefillin. Says the Chavetz Chaim, "Mipnei she'ein mashin es mitzvah." We don't delay the mitzvah of tefillin because we do not have tzitzits handy. Even though, if you would delay putting on the tefillin, you would do the mitzvah in the more proper fashion later when you have the talis. So somebody will say to himself, why should I put on tefillin now when I don't have a talis? I'll wait until later when I have tzitzits. I know I'm going to get tzitzits later, and I'll put on the tefillin then. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, ein mashin es a mitzvah. We don't delay the kiyum of a mitzvah. Even though it's possible that later you will do the mitzvah in a better way, mitzvah b'shaita chaviva, a mitzvah at the proper time is more beloved. And therefore, if now it's time to put on tefillin even if you do not have tzitzits. V'chein, and similarly says the Chavetz Chaim, b'tadir v'she'enoi tadir, when it comes to the concept of tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem, the kaimelon the tadir kaidem, imein tadir lefanenu, if the mitzvah that is more frequent is not available to us, ein tzarich lahamtin. When it comes to tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem, we're not going to say, oh, okay, tadir is like let's say it's Motzi Shabbos Chanukah. So we know that Motzi Shabbos Chanukah, we learned that there's two different minhagim. Which one you should do first? Should you do Havdalah first because tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem, or should you do Chanukah licht first because we want to be ma'acher, we want to delay leaving Shabbos. So let's say you hold like the minig of tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem, but now you don't have besamim handy, you don't have Havdalah candle handy, you don't have yayin handy. So you're going to say, okay, I can't light Chanukah licht because tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem. No, tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem means you have two mitzvahs mezumin in front of you to accomplish, and you're not sure which one should get kedima, which one should go first. You do the more frequent one first. But if you don't have both of them available in front of you, you don't delay the other one because tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem. Sif Beis. Very interesting sif. Mi shehu zahir betalis katan. Somebody who is nizar properly to always wear a talis cotton. So he wakes up in the morning and he puts on his talis cotton. So before we even discuss Hilchos Tefillin, he's already wearing a talis cotton. Says the Mechaber, Mi shehu zahir betalis katan. Somebody who is careful to always wear a talis cotton. Yilbashenu, he should put on the talis katan right away in the morning. V'yaniach tefillin b'veisai, and then he should put on his tefillin in his home, while he's home. Now note, so far he didn't put on a talis gadol. He put on a talis cotton, and then he put on his tefillin. V'yelech lavush b'tzitzits, and then he should go out clothed in tzitzits, umuchtar betfillin, and crowned with his tefillin, lebeis hakneses. This is how he should go to Shul. V'sham yisatef b'talis gadol, and over there in Shul, then he should put on his talis gadol. Now, before we go to the Mishnah Berurah, a little bit of an aberration, let's take a look at the Bir Halacha. Bir Halacha dibra amaschil mishu hu zahir. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Ritzaynoi loymar. What the Mechaber wants to say over here is, Ki kosev bazayar, because it is written in the Zayar HaKadosh, She mitzvah leilech mi pesach beisai betzitzitz utfilin. There is a great mitzvah to leave the door of your house in the morning wearing tzitzits and tefillin. Valkein, and therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, im einenu zahir b'talis cotton, somebody who for whatever reason is not nizar, is not careful to always be wearing a talis cotton, in that case, muchrach al yedei zeh lilbaish beveisai, he would be forced to put on in his house koydem ha-tefillin, before he puts on the tefillin, ha-talis gadol. He would have to put on the talis gadol first in order to be mekayim this zayar. Aval im hu zahir b'talis cotton, but if he's always careful to wear a talis cotton, yuchal lotzeis kol zeh, then he could fulfill the requirements of the Zayar HaKadosh al yedei talis cotton, from the fact that he's wearing a talis cotton. V'atalis gadol yuchal olav shei bebeis hakneses, and then he could put on the talis gadol in Shul. V'cholshkein, but certainly im yirtza lehisatef gam b'talis gadol bebeisai, but certainly if he wants, he could put on the talis gadol in his house as well. So, just to be clear, what is the Bir Halacha addressing here? The way the Mechaber writes Sif Beis is very interesting. He writes that I am addressing now Nishu Zayir b'talis cotton. Who am I talking to? Somebody who is careful to always wear a talis cotton. He should put on his tefillin, and he should go to Shul, lavush, clothed in tzitzits, and muchtar b'tefillin, and crowned in tefillin. Says the Bir Halacha, what does he mean? This is only for somebody who's nizar to put on a talis cotton. Explains to Chavetz Chaim, what he means is like this. The whole Mechaber over here is coming off of a Zayar. The Zayar says that there's a tremendous inyan to walk out of the door of your house in the morning and to walk by the mezuzah while you're wearing tzitzits and you're wearing tefillin. So you walk out of your house and you've got the mitzvah of tzitzits on your body, you've got the mitzvah of tefillin on your head and on your arm, you've got the mitzvah of mezuzah on your doorpost. This is the way you walk out of your house to go to Shul. The Zayar says malachim come and malachim escort you out of the house, and they escort you to the Beis HaKnesses. The Zayar says that the malach ha-mekatreg, the Satan, who wants to find fault chas v'chalila in you, up in Shamayim, that malach is also there, but the other malachim are giving you brachas, and the Satan is stuck, he's got to say amen. So says the Mechaber over here that this is a Gavaldik inyan. Now, if you're Zahir to wear a talis katan, so then you could be Yotze this Zayar without even putting on the talis gadol first. And some people don't want to put on the talis gadol when they leave the house, because if they put on the talis gadol when they leave the house, nowadays when we're unfortunately still in Golus, you go outside in the street by the Goyim and you're wearing a talis gadol, looks funny. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zechet Tzadik Levracha, was very against, even in Yiddish neighborhoods, he was very against people walking in the street on Shabbos wearing the talis gadol. He used to say, don't shtach the eigen of the Eina Yehudim. Don't poke the Einam Yehudim in the eye with your talis. Have a shtickle anivus, have a shtickle pachad, realize that this is not your home, and realize that you're a gullus. Don't walk outside with the talis gadol. So maybe you don't want to go outside wearing the talis gadol. But says the Mechaber, you could still be Mekayim the Zayar. You're Mekayim the Zayar with your talis cotton. So you're lavish b'tzitzits, you're muchtar b'tefillin, and you've got the mezuzah. That's the way to go to Shul. That's the Bir Halacha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois katan ches beveisai. The Mechaber said, put on the tefillin in your home. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why? Kedei sheyetze mi pesach beisai b'tzitzits u'tefillin. So we're going to see that there are two different inyanim over here. One inyan is what I just told you from the Zayar, brought down in the Beis Yosef and brought down in the Darkei Moshe, that is an inyan to leave your house wearing tzitzits and tefillin. So that's what the Mishnah Berurah is mitzayin over here in Ois Katan Ches, that the purpose of this is Kidei Sheyetze Mi Pesach Beisai B'tzitzis U'Tfilin, so that you should leave your house while wearing tzitzis and tefillin. U'kemoi shehevi Abeis Yosef Adar kemoi sheb'shem Hazayar ayin sham shehu inyan gadol. V'im yoidea sheyelech derech mevuah isametu nafais. Now let's say you know that in order to get to the Beis HaKnesses, you're going to have to walk through streets where there's filth. You know, especially back in the day, there was tzayah from animals all over the place. Maybe it smells. Maybe you're going to go by a very smelly place. It's not bakavidik that you should be wearing tefillin in such a place. So it says that Mishnah Berurah yedeh sheyelech derech mevuah isametu nafais. Or you know that you're going to go walking in a street where there are Einam Yehudim who might give you difficulties that you're walking with your tefillin on. Then the Mishnah Berurah says, I have another eitzah for you. You could still put on the tefillin in the courtyard, in the chutzner of the Beis HaKnesses. Now, here is where we see right away that there's a second inyan. You realize, if you put on your tefillin in the chutzner of the Beis HaKnesses, you're not mekayim the zayar. This zayar that we mentioned already said that there's an inyan to leave your house with a Tallis tefillin. If you're not able to leave your house with the Tallis tefillin because you're going to have to walk in mevuais mitu nafais, or you're going to have to walk in front of Einam Yehudim who are going to make you a problem, then you're not mekayim this zayar by putting on your tefillin in the chutzner of the Beis HaKnesses. So what's at work over here? We're going to see that the Zayar also says that there's an inyan to walk into Shul while you're wearing your Tallis and tefillin. Why? Because when we go into Shul, we say, V'ani b'roiv chastecha avay v'secha eshtaka ve'elhecha kachacha b'yirasecha. 1 second. Not what I was looking for. Give me a second. I'll take a quick look at the Beis Yosef. Chaf hey. Says the Beis Yosef. Come on. Yeah, no, I did say the right pasuk. We say "Eshtachave el heichal kachacha b'yirasecha." We thank the Rabbeinu Shalom for the opportunity that we have to come el heichal kachacha, to his holy heichal. The heichal for us is the Beis HaKnesses, the Beis HaMedrash, and the Zohar says like this: "Kadnafik mitare v'loy tefillin bereishe v'tzitzis belavushe." Somebody leaves his house and he doesn't have on tefillin. He's not wearing tzitzits. Va'amar, and he says when he comes to Shul, Eshtachav el hekal kachacha b'yirasecha, kucha barichu amar, the Rabbeinu Shalom says, Anhu moiroi, where is this moira? Where is this yira shamayim that you have? You're saying, Eshtachav el hekal kachacha b'yirasecha, you're thanking me that you come to the Beis HaKnesses b'yirasecha, with my fear, with yira shamayim. Says the Rabbeinu Shalom, Anhu moiroi, where is this Yira Shamayim? V'da asid sahadusa de shikra. This person is saying edu sheker. He's saying false testimony on himself. How so? Because he's coming into Shul and he's saying Eshtachav alechal kachacha b'yirasecha, but he's not being mekayim my mitzvahs. He's not wearing tzitzis. He's not wearing tefillin. So here we have the two different inyanim. One inyan is walk out of your house wearing tzitzits and tefillin. The second inyan is walk into the shul wearing talis and tefillin, so that you shouldn't be made edu sheker chas v'chalila on yourself. And that's what the Mishnah Berurah says here. The Mishnah Berurah here in Ois Katan Ches is saying, if im yodea sheyelech derech mevuah isametu nafais If you know that you can't leave your house wearing the tzitzits and tefillin to come to shul that way, instead go to shul, and before you walk into the building, and I want to be careful about this because I'm reading the words of the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, when you're still outside, put on the tefillin, yanichem b'chatzar beis hakneses. Put them on outside in the courtyard of the beis hakneses, because then you could still be Mekayim walking into shul wearing your tzitzits and tefillin, so that you're not chas v'chalila meyed eder sheker on yourself when you walk into shul without the tzitzits and tefillin, and the Rebbe should say, where's your Yerushalayim? You're not wearing tzitzis, you're not wearing tefillin. Now let's go a little weiter. And if it's not possible for you even to put on the tefillin in the chatzar beis hakneses, yaniche beveisai. Another eight is put them on in your house. V'yachasem bekoivai, and cover up the shalroish with your hat, so no one will see it. The shalyad could be covered by your sleeve. The shalroish cover with your hat, or with your hand, so the Einam Yehudim won't see it. The Mavois Tunafais won't be a problem because you're covering everything, so there's no covered issue. Weinbach Rainim, and the Mishnah Berurah says, take a look at the Achrayim Shekasvu who write, B'mashkim kaidem or haboiker ubala beis hakneses. Let's say somebody gets up very early. He gets up before Mishayakir. So he gets up before the Zman of Tzitzis and Tefillin, and he comes to shul for a Daf Yomi shir early in the morning. Lo shayach hasaras hazayar. Then this zayar is not negeh. I can't leave my house with Tallis and Tefillin because I'm going to the Daf Yomi shir when I still can't put on my Tallis and Tefillin. It's not an Indian of Meyad Eder Sheker on myself when I come into shul without tzitzis and tefillin because I can't put them on yet. Ta'adayin loy moti zman chiyuva, because the zman of the chiyuv didn't arrive yet. Nevertheless, says the Mishnah Berurah, kishayoyer hayoyim, when it gets light enough outside, yoyser toiv, it would be better sheyetzer lechatzar beis hakneses, that you should go out to the courtyard of the shul, v'yilbishem sham, and put on the tefillin there, v'yikanis achakach lebeis hakneses, and come into the shul wearing the tzitzis and the tefillin, and come in that way. Eis katan tes v'sham yisatef. When you get to shul, you put on the talis gadol. V'afal pi shabbat talis gadol yadoi kaidem sheniach tefillin. Now in this case, you might have a kasha. You're telling me I'm wearing my talis cotton, I should put on my tefillin at home, and then I should walk to shul. But I have my talis at home also. So what happened to ein mavir na ala mitzvahs? I'm supposed to put on the talis first, right? You told me malam b'kodesh. I'm supposed to put on the talis first. But now you're telling me I should put on the tefillin at home, and then I should put on the talis when I go to shul. Explains to Mishnah Berurah, that's not a problem like I told you earlier. Ain't tzarich lehisatef b'y beveisai. You don't have to put on the talis at home. Kevin she'ein daita lelav sheikan. Because I don't put on the talis at home. At home, I put on tefillin. The place for putting on the talis is in shul. So there's no issue. Not of ein malam of malam b'kodesh, and not of mavir and ala mitzvahs either. Now, I'll speak more about Lamaisa, how we're noyig nowadays, but let's finish the sif first. Let's go to the words of the Ramah, 4 lines down near the end of the line. Says the Ramah, Hagah, V'ha'olam na'agu de Welt vierzach, lehisatef af betalas gadol kaidem. The Welt is noyig to put on the talis gadol also before they come to shul. Ulevarich alav, and to make a bracha on it. And after they put on the talis gadol, then they put on the tefillin and they go to shul. So what's the difference here between the Ramah and the Mechaber? The Mechaber said, if you're wearing a talis cotton, you don't have to put on the talis gadol before you leave the house. Why? Because you're already lavish b'tzitzits, and now you'll be muchter b'tefillin, and now you'll come to shul, you put on the talis gadol in shul. Says the Ramah just says that the minig of the Welt is to put on the talis gadol at home too before they put on the tefillin. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Yud, Lehisatef, the Welt is noig to put on the talis gadol. However, the Chavetz Chaim does say, in a place where there are a lot of Einam Yehudim in the street, Yesatef b'chatzar beis hakneses im efshaloi. It's better that you should put on the talis gadol in the courtyard of the beis hakneses if you are able to. Eis Katan Yud Aleph, ulevarech alav. The Ramah said they're noig to put on the talis gadol and to make a bracha on it, Pirush, and I believe the problem that the Chavetz Chaim has over here is exactly what Chiddush is the Ramah telling me that they should put on the Tallis Gadol and make a bracha on it. Of course you make a bracha on it. So the Chavetz Chaim tells you, I'll explain to you what he means. What he means is, it comes out, according to the Ramah, that what is a person doing? He's putting on his Tallis cotton, right, when he gets up. Then he's going, while he's still at home, and he's putting on the Tallis Gadol, and then he's putting on his tefillin, and then he's going to Shul. Now, that's a little bit odd, because l'chayra, you're making a bracha she'eina tzricha. If you put on your Tallis cotton, and then within the next several minutes, you're going to go downstairs, take your Tallis tefillin, take out your Tallis and put on your Tallis, and now you're going to make a bracha lehisatev patzitzis on the Tallis Gadol, that's a bracha she'eina tzricha. Why are you making two brachas on tzitzis when you don't have to? You don't really have a hefsek between the Tallis cotton and the Tallis Gadol. You didn't leave the house. Presumably there wasn't a very long span of time between the two, and you knew you were going to do both. So there explains the Chavetz Chaim, what the Ramah means is, the Ramah is saying that the Welt Vierzach to put on the Tallis Gadol at home, ulevarech olav, and to make a bracha on it, because they're not going to make a bracha on the Tallis cotton. This is the famous shita of the Ramah. The shita of the Ramah is, do not make a bracha on the Tallis cotton in the morning if you know that you're going to Shul and putting on a Tallis Gadol. Instead, go to Shul and pater the Tallis cotton with the bracha on the Tallis Gadol. Says the Mishnah Berurah inside. Ois cotton yod aleph olavarek alav pirish berachas lehisatev v'yechaven, and he should have intent liftar bebracha zu gama Tallis cotton, and he should pater the Tallis cotton with the bracha on the Tallis Gadol. Ukidalael b'siv chesiv yud ayin sham Mishnah Berurah siv cotton chaf daled. Okay. Practically speaking, nowadays, very few people put on their Tallis tefillin at home and go to Shul wearing their Tallis tefillin. Generally speaking, it's just not practical. Either you have a long walk and you're walking, again, we're in Gullus. And I don't care, Rabbi Isai, if you live in Borough Park or Williamsburg or Muncie or what, you're in Gullus. You're in Gullus, we're not walking in the street wearing our Tallis tefillin. Often you have to drive to Shul. You're not getting into the car and driving in your Tallis and tefillin. So we don't put on our Tallis and tefillin at home and leave the home wearing the Tallis and tefillin. If you live in a situation where you're right up the path from the Shul and you could do it, over here by Yeshiva Staten Island, there are people who live in the Kyle House complex, which is right up the path from the yeshiva. And I know some people who put on the Tallis and tefillin at home and they walk down to yeshiva wearing the Tallis and tefillin. And they're fortunate enough that Mekayim Nezayah, that they walk out of the house with the Tallis and tefillin. It's a beautiful thing. Most people don't do it. Some people go to Shul and they put on their Tallis and tefillin in a different room. I don't, look, the Mishnah Berurah over here does not make mention of the idea of putting on the Tallis and tefillin in a different room. He says, Bachatzar Beis HaKnesses, in the courtyard of the Beis HaKnesses. Now, somebody wanted to tell me, well, you know, the reason he says that is because the Metzias was that in the times of the Chavetz Chaim, shuls weren't big fancy buildings. As soon as you opened up the door, you were in the shul. There was no such thing as another room to put the Tallis and tefillin on in. I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm buying that. And he keeps on saying, Bachatzar Beis HaKnesses, Bachatzar Beis HaKnesses. The Rishir Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zechet Tzadik V'Kadosh L'Vracha, in MTJ, he did not put on his Tallis and tefillin in another room. And he had rooms that he could have put his Tallis and tefillin on. He came to MTJ, he went into the Beis HaMedrash, and he put on his Tallis and tefillin in the Beis HaMedrash. He could have put them on in a different room. And certainly if he felt it was an Indian and he felt he needed a better place to do it, he could have said so. He could have put it on in the office. He could have put it on in the side room in the library. He very easily could have walked into the library that had a door that opened up, even though then he would have had to walk in. The library opened from the Beis HaMedrash. So that's not a good argument, because it would have already been after he walked into the Beis HaMedrash. But he could have put them on in the Kollel office. He could have put them on in one of the other rooms. He did not. When he came to Yeshiva Staten Island, when they davened chakras in the library, my understanding is that the vast majority of the time, he went straight into the library and he put on the tefillin there. Again, he could have put on his Tallis tefillin in another room. In camp upstate, so I do remember that when the Beis Medrash moved in camp twice, when the Beis Medrash was down the hill from his bungalow and they drove him from the bungalow down to the Beis Medrash, he put on the Tallis tefillin down in the Beis Medrash. He didn't put them on in the bungalow because he said, if we're already getting in the car, I'll put them on first in the Beis Medrash. Later on, when they moved the Beis Medrash and it was right next to his bungalow, and he would just either walk right over or just get into a golf cart and drive a very, very short distance, then most of the time he did put them on in the bungalow. Occasionally, though, I do remember him putting them on in the Beis Medrash. You'll ask me, maybe it was raining then, maybe that's why he did it. I can't say, my memory is not clear enough. But it seems to me that Rav Moshe was only going to be makpid on this inyan if he felt where it was a situation that he could leave the house wearing the Tallis tefillin and go straight into the Beis HaKnesses wearing the Tallis tefillin. If he couldn't put them on at home, then already he wasn't makpid so much on the other side. Now you'll ask me, why not? Like the Mishnah Berurah says over here, if you can't put them on at home, so put them on b'chatzar Beis HaKnesses. I'm not convinced that the Yeshiva Zatzal held that putting them on in another room meant putting it on b'chatzar Beis HaKnesses. Once you went into the building of the Shul, I have a funny feeling he held that once you went into the building of the Shul, you're already in the Shul. That's not called anymore that you're b'chatzar Beis HaKnesses. Okay, now let's go to Siv Gimel. Harash haya misader abrachais ad oiter Yisrael b'sefara. The Rosh would say all of the brachas hashachar until the bracha of Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam oiter Yisrael b'sefara, where we thank the Rabbeinu Shalom for crowning Klal Yisrael with splendor. Oiter Yisrael b'sefara. Va'az, and then when he got up to that bracha, haya maniach tefillin, then he would put on his tefillin, and he would make all the appropriate brachas necessary to put on his tefillin. And when he finished putting on his tefillin, umevarech oiter Yisrael b'sefara, then he would recite the bracha of oiter Yisrael b'sefara, and he would have in mind the tefillin. What does it mean that the Rebbe Hashem crowns Klal Yisrael with splendor? Tefillin shal roish. That's a crown of splendor. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Yud Beis va'az haya kidei litein shavach v'hidah bebracha zu. The Rosh did this so that he would be able to give shavach v'hidah to the Rabbeinu Shalom, gam al hatfilin shenikrain pe'er, on the tefillin which are referred to in the pasuk in Yecheskel as a pe'er, as splendor. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, the Rabbeinu Shalom told Yecheskel, pe'ercha chavoish, told Chizkiyahu HaMelech, pe'ercha chavoish alecha. Even though you're going to be an avel, you should still wear your tefillin. So in that pasuk, the pe'ercha, the pe'er is a reference to the tefillin. The koy al tefillin shehin pe'er li Yisrael, because there is splendor to Klal Yisrael. Kamay shenemar, like the pasuk in the Torah Kedosha says, v'ra'u kol amei ha'aretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha. The world will see that the name of Hashem is on you, v'yaru mimeka, and they will fear you. V'darshinan elu tefillin shebarosh. And we darsh in the Gemara, Megillah Tezayin Amud Beis, that's a reference to the Tefillin Shebarosh. Eis Katan Yud Gimel u'Mavarech Oiter, u'Ba'artz Esachayim Kasav Sefer HaTzachayim writes, Loi Ro'isi Shenayagin Kain. He writes he did not see that people should be noyag like this, to bedafka wait to put on the Tefillin until the bracha of Oiter Yisrael b'Sefara. Rak Menichin Tefillin Kaidem Berchas HaShachar Oy Achakach Kalechad Lefi Min Hagai. You could put on your tefillin either before Berchas HaShachar or after, each person according to his minute. Rak re'isi medaktikim, he says he did see those that were medaktik, lamashmeish betfillin, to touch the tefillin shal yad v'shal roish b'shashem mevarech brachazu. If they were wearing their tefillin when they made the bracha of Oiter Yisrael b'sefara, they would touch the tefillin shal yad and the tefillin shal roish. Some people have the minute to kiss, they kiss the tefillin of the Yad and the Rosh by the bracha of Oiter Yisrael b'Sefara. Siv Daled, says the Mechaber, last line, Lamed Beis, Lamed Beis. Tzarich sheyu tefillin olav b'shas Kriya Shema u'tefillah. It's a requirement that one should be wearing his tefillin by Kriya Shema and by Shemona Esrei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Yud Daled. Ritzaynai Loimar. What the Mechaber wants to say when he says that tzarich, it's a requirement that you wear the tefillin by Kriya Shema and tefillah, l'chol ha'pachas b'shas Kriya Shema u'tefillah. At least when you say Kriya Shema and Shemona Esrei, you should be wearing tefillin. U'kedol kaban b'siman lamed zayin siv beis, like we will say later on in siman lamed zayin siv beis. V'armina b'gemara, and we say in the Gemara in Yudal and Beis, kalakayre Kriya Shema b'li tefillin, anyone who says Kriya Shema, and it means when you're saying Kriya Shema to be mekayim in the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. We're not talking about somebody who says Kriya Shema lamita. You say Kriya Shema, or you say Kriya Shema for some other reason. But when you say Kriya Shema, the Kriya Shema of the Chiyuv, b'shach b'cha v'kumecha, when you say Kriya Shema shel shacharis, which is the zman of tzitzis and tefillin, kalakayre Kriya Shema b'li tefillin, hareyu ki'ilu meyud edu sheker ba'atzmai chas v'shalom. It's like he's saying false testimony on himself. Upershu b'Tosfos, and Tosfos explains, levisha omer ukeshartem la'ois. You're saying the pasuk ukeshartem la'ois al yodecha v'hayulu taitafa ispein einecha v'ein kosher. You're talking the talk, but you're not walking the walk. You're saying the psukim, you're talking about the chiyuv, but you're not being mekayim it. V'avshe b'diyevet yatzel yidei Kriya Shema, even though certainly b'diyevet, if you weren't wearing tefillin, you were mekayim the mitzvah of laying in Kriya Shema. However, there still is a tzad avera over here that you're being made edu sheker on yourself. Shemara al atzmai, because as if you're showing about yourself, she'ein roitz alakayim ratzon Hashem yisbarach. It looks like you don't want to be mekayim the ratzon habayre. V'zeu edu sheker shemeid al atzmai. V'yesh oid pirush acher ayin b'levush. V'kasa b'sefer charedim. A beautiful sefer charedim. V'kasa b'sefer charedim. To be zen nilmad, that from this halacha we could learn that kisha omer ve'ahavta es Hashem. You say Kriya Shema and you talk about the mitzvah of avas Hashem. Ve'ahavta es Hashem alekecha v'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol ma'idecha. It's a tzivui. The Torah Dirshu tells you have a mitzvah of avas Hashem ve'ahavta, and you shall love Hashem v'chol levavecha, with your entire heart. V'chol nafshecha, v'chol ma'idecha. Yira lahachtas avas Hashem yisbarach b'libay. You should make sure to arouse in yourself a feeling of love for the Rabbanu Shalom. Shelo yeh kedai v'sheker chas v'shalom. So you should not look like you're being made edu sheker on yourself. Same way we say, if you say kishartem lo yisal yodecha v'hayulu taitafa yisbein einecha, and you're not wearing tefillin, you're being made edu sheker. So too, if you say v'ahavta es Hashem alekecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol ma'idecha, and you have no feeling of avas Hashem, so too it's as if you're being made edu sheker chas v'chalila. V'dan, you should know, says the Chavetz Chaim, Talai Amru Kain, that we did not say this. Alakisha Oisa Kain b'mezid. This is only negeya if you do it b'mezid. Shemis atzel lahaniach tefillin kaidu Kriya Shema. Somebody was too lazy to put on tefillin before he said Kriya Shema, so then we have a taina on him that it's like he's being made edu sheker ba'atzmai. Avamisha ain't like tefillin. What do you do with someone you don't have tefillin? You shouldn't say Kriya Shema because you don't have tefillin. Oikeshu baderech, or you're traveling on the road. Umakmas kor v'tzina ain't a yokal aniach tefillin. It's 20 below and you can't put on your tefillin. V'chol kai gavna b'vadai ain't loy la'acher Kriya Shema b'zmana makmazeh. Do not delay from saying Kriya Shema b'zmana, from laying Kriya Shema within the proper time frame, because you don't have tefillin. Levush b'siman unches. This comes from the levush. Ve'atakti sham es l'shaynai ayin sham. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Baruch Shem should send Yeshua's, Refuah's, Parnasset, Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias Kol Tzedek b'meher of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.